I did a quick look through of my list of videos, and noticed that I actually don't have a video about the positive things about having avoidant personality disorder, which makes sense because you know, bragging about yourself is sort of the antithesis of being avoidant. So I'm going to give it a shot, and I know of singing lists where people have come up with them, and some of them are really good. And I couldn't find any today. They seem to have all magically disappeared, and you can't get anything taken off the internet, so that's impressive. Which also made me think, oh, yep, should make the video, because if these things are being magically deleted, then I don't know. But I've seen them and know they exist. That's the first thing, is that avoidant people generally aren't sort of braggy. And that's good. That's very. See, this is hard to talk about positive things. But that is a good thing. And it feels awful to say because this other thing is bad, but because braggarts are, that's not a good quality to have. So if you're not being a braggart, then by default, that's a good thing. The other thing, I mean, there are hallmarks of being avoidant. Things like the reading people's minds thing. Now, what that is basically that people are hyper aware of micro expressions, and they're hyper aware of the effect that they have on people and how people are feeling, etc. And that is, well, it's sort of like compassion to the extreme. This is why avoidant people make excellent teachers, because they can and will pick up on when their student isn't understanding whatever they're being taught, and they'll be able to then immediately go in and check in on that and make sure that the students do understand. They're very good at that. I mean, the opposite side of that is there's a tendency to over-explain if you get talking, but, then you just need to have somebody clued in enough to say, I get it, it's enough. But yes, that's actually an excellent quality, because there are so many people, especially now, that are so concerned with themselves that it's really difficult for them to try to read another person. And avoidant people can definitely do that in spades. The fact that they're not insisting on being the center of attention all the time. Again, I mean, nobody can live in a world where everybody has to be the center of attention. So there has to be people that are willing to step back and be the wallflower. And it's hard on an avoidant person to do that, but like for society, it's necessary. You need to have people that don't jump in with both feet and insist that they're the ones that are going to take charge. I mean, that is just a good thing. You can't have everybody like that, but you definitely need to have some. As far as a personal life, okay, yes, avoidance basically for a lot of people means being lonely and isolated, and being absolutely incapable of breaking through that. Incapable forever. However, the other side of that is most avoidants have hobbies that are, extremely extensive. I mean, if an avoidant person likes to read, they don't just read one book a year. They read a couple books a week because they have the time to do it. And there are other things. I mean, they have this time, and they really throw themselves into it. So, of course, they run themselves down for it. And then they're criticized by people for wasting time doing X, Y, and Z. Or they feel like whatever their hobby is like a really geeky thing that's really embarrassing. Again, and that's just a self-worth thing. That you just think there's, in a nutshell, if it's something that I do, then it must be not a good thing. That's sort of how they think, like, well, I might be an absolute expert at this whatever thing, but by default that means that it's a diminished subject. But this is not true, and this is uncommon. I mean, you get people who their expertise is, they watch reality TV, or their expertise is they take good selfies. Well, avoidant people, maybe they could take a decent selfie, but if they're taking a selfie, they're also taking really good photographs of everything else in the world, because it's hard to take it from me. It's hard to turn the camera onto yourself, and so if you do that, like maybe 1% of the time you're taking a picture of yourself, and the rest of the time you're taking pictures of the world. And you practice something enough, you get pretty good at it. So that's another thing that people, you take it for granted. You think everybody's doing this because you're doing it, so everybody must do it. And it's just not true that most people do that have extensive hobbies nowadays. They don't. Somebody's hobby is following a sports team. There are super obsessive people but generally, just watching a game a week does not constitute a hobby. It's a lost art, and people go, oh, I'm so isolated, I'm doing this dumb thing all by myself, and blah, 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 blah. Don't do that. Because, I don't know, I don't know why people have completely gotten rid of the idea of hobbies being a good thing, but anyway, so that's good. So, those are some really little things, and I wish I had more. I've seen more. Things like excellent workers because they put their head down to get the job done, and they're not gossiping with all their coworkers, etc., etc. There are some negative aspects of being avoidant that are sort of unavoidable, but the positive things, again, it's people tend to sort of say they're just the norm, like everybody's like that, and it's just not true. It's not true that that you're maybe, well, there's a difference between being compassionate and being aware of other people, but the self-awareness that you're aware of other people, that doesn't really make sense, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Other people, they aren't self-aware enough to be aware of anybody else, and because avoidant people spend so much time thinking about themselves and what's going on, it was like, oh, what was that movie? Oh, now it's totally slipping. Revenge of the Nerds. If you saw Revenge of the Nerds, the big punchline at the very end, this is a total spoiler, but, somebody says, why are you so good at that? And he said, oh, it's because I spend all my time thinking about it. Bingo! That's about it in a nutshell. You know, so you think about other people so much that you, even though you don't have any sort of personal experience, you sort of do. You're better at picking up on things that people do than other people. Of course, you might not be right, and you might put a negative spin on it, and you might try to find a way to blame yourself for whatever somebody's doing, and that's sort of, can come off as egotistic. I'm not sure which word fits there better, but anyway, that can be annoying. That you think that you're the cause to everything, and when it's not necessarily true. But it's better, in my opinion, that you are willing to step up and take responsibility. And this is huge because so many people don't. So many people do the complete opposite, which is to, one, not take responsibility, but two, to even blame other people for it, for things that they did themselves. And that I just, yuck. I don't think that is, I mean, I understand it's sort of like rampant, but I personally, I think that's not a nice way to be. Let's put it that way. That's just not good. Which, again, maybe that's sort of a twisted way to look at things. To say, okay, this out here, this is clearly not good. And I do the opposite. So therefore, by default, it must be positive. That's kind of how you have to look at stuff, because it's so difficult to come up with an explanation that works, an explanation that you can accept, a way to see yourself in a positive way whatsoever. So to go through it like the back door, and don't say, hey, I'm great at this, or whatever, because that's like, you gotta be kidding me. That's impossible, and doing that can really trigger a downward spiral if you are avoidant. But to instead just say, okay, this is bad. I'm not this. It's not just neutral. It's actually good. Even if I don't really have any control over it, that's okay. That's okay. There's just other, if this is a good thing. And it's really hard. I mean, it's hard for me to say this, and I'm trying really hard not to put myself in here, because then I would just collapse. Because there's no way I could make this video if I felt like I was talking about myself instead of talking about avoidant people in general. But yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you can do it. And just, again, it's this acceptance thing. Just stop fighting it. Okay. It doesn't have to be something that you have to deny. That there are positive aspects to being avoidant. It's just a fact. It is just a fact that there's good and bad in everything. And, I mean, it's kind of a curse to be avoidant, but then again, not all of it is completely bad. So try not to get stuck in a super negative space when it comes to it. And don't necessarily dwell on the good things, but just accept them. They're there. And you don't need to deny it because, you can't be good. There's nothing good about you, so therefore there's no good whatsoever. I mean, it's just sort of let it be in the background, and it is what it is. And nope, you're not the worst, terrible thing on the planet. Even though maybe everything in you wants to think that. Not true. There are some little nuggets of good that you're probably overlooking, because how can you live without overlooking them?